Hi, I'm Rachel Nolan, and this is Module 8, the legal aspects of teacher evaluation. So, over the past few years, teacher evaluations have really changed. They used to be maybe an administrator would come in once a year, write up an evaluation based on a lesson plan that the teacher had fully prepared, and that was it. But recent studies have led to shifts in this. There's been increased focus on boosting teacher effectiveness, making sure tenure is a process that really works. There's been political pressure to dismiss teachers that are underperforming. There's been a lot of clashes between unions and certain lawmakers. And so we've noticed a shift, and there's been a lot of money funneled into how do we evaluate teachers more effectively and make sure we are keeping the good ones and getting rid of the ineffective ones. So in 2009, there was a race to the top competition where, based on a big pool of funding, the Department of Education offered grants to states that agreed to change their evaluation policies in certain ways. So they had to evaluate teachers based on multiple measures, one being student achievement data, so mostly test scores in that case. In 2010, Colorado, my state that I teach in, said that teachers who receive poor evaluations can be returned to probationary status. In my school district, probationary status lasts for 3 years, and then you're tenured at the beginning of your 4th year. And then in 2013, 28 states required teachers to be evaluated annually, which was up a great number from just a few years before that. And then 41 states required student achievement data to be included in those evaluations. So one of the main new evaluation methods is the value-added model, or the VAM, which attempts to take student assessment scores and use those to evaluate teacher effectiveness. And so they start with a baseline of where the student is, how much they should be learning throughout a school year, and then how much does the teacher contribute to that expected growth. There are a lot of critics of this system, myself included, that say that the results are subject to a lot of random error. If a teacher teaches honors classes, their kids don't have as much to gain over the year. If a teacher teaches a lot of special needs students or in a different kind of area, they could show less growth than typically expected. And then sometimes you just get that certain group of students that doesn't perform even though you have been shown to be an effective teacher. So it really can be quite random. Standardized tests are also not always the best measure because a lot of teachers don't teach anything that is evaluated on those tests, myself included. Science is only tested in a standardized test in Colorado in 8th grade. And then there's an optional one in high school, but most parents opt their kids out because they don't feel like it's necessary. And so only about 20% of my students take that science standardized assessment through the state. And so for teachers like me, for art teachers, for history teachers, one study said up to 15 to 30% of teachers the standardized tests do apply to. The rest of us, our content is not tested on those. So it can be hard to evaluate teachers using this VAM model if our content is not being tested in that way. So this has been brought to the courts a couple times. Two cases that stood out to me were Wagner versus Haslam in Tennessee. They argued that using a school-wide growth measure to evaluate teachers was unfair for the teachers, that their subjects were untested, and the court dismissed that lawsuit. And then Cook versus Bennett in Florida was very similar. The Education Association challenging the school-wide growth formula, and again, the court ruled against the teachers' union. Some other new evaluation methods. The NEA, the National Education Association, is recommending multiple measures based on clear teaching standards. They listed out some multiple measures that could be used: classroom observations, student assessment data, teacher artifacts, teacher interviews, teacher self-assessments, and student surveys. which I think students can tell you a lot, especially older students. So all of that should play into evaluation and not just one or two things. TAP, BEST, and IMPACT are three models that I'm about to discuss. So TAP is the Teacher Advancement Program. It has four key elements, which is multiple career paths, ongoing professional growth, instructionally focused accountability, and performance-based compensation. The evaluation standards are extensive and research proven. The performance-based compensation is a combined total of teacher evaluation and student data and school-wide achievement, which we were just talking about with those court cases. And then evaluators, the administrators presumably, have to go through training to be certified in this, and they have to be recertified frequently. The BEST program is portfolio-based assessment. A lot of states have very similar things to this. The portfolio would consist of lesson plans, teaching videos, student work, and then out-of-class achievements. And then that portfolio is judged by teachers that teach the same subject as the teacher being evaluated, and these usually come along with a mentorship program. IMPACT is another one, which breaks teachers into two categories: those that can be evaluated using the value-added model because their content is on a standardized assessment, and then those teachers that can't. And so if a teacher's content doesn't fall under a standardized assessment, then the evaluation is based on classroom observations and classroom-based assessments. So in my school district, Littleton Public Schools, we have a pretty lengthy evaluation process. So there's a 2-year induction program for anyone new to the district. So I'm currently in that because I started at this district last year, even though this is my 8th year of teaching. There are yearly observations. If you are in the induction program, the first year, it's the principal who is your evaluator, and then she will evaluate twice a year, or observe twice a year, 2 formals and 2 informal walk-ins. This year I do expect also 2 formal observations and 2 informal walk-ins unannounced, but my observer is no longer the principal, it's a vice principal. And then once I'm out of the induction program, they do 1 formal and 1 informal walkthrough per year for teachers. There's an extensive rubric that's filled out by the teacher and the evaluator. So at the very beginning of each year, every teacher needs to go into this system called RANDA, which I'll talk about in a moment, and evaluate themselves based on a very extensive rubric of teaching standards and practices. And then once the first formal observation is done, the evaluator will then evaluate the teacher on the same rubric, and then we sit down for a conversation and talk about the differences. And those conversations tend to be really good. I've liked that. We have to set goals every year, and I don't like this as much because I feel like the goal is never circled back to. It doesn't matter what the goal is. I tried really hard to write a goal that I actually want to follow, but a lot of my coworkers said, we just want to get the goal written, and we want it to be written in the language that they want, and then it's done. So I don't think that's the most effective thing. And then RANDA is our computer system that has all of our observation data and our rubric in it. It's based on the Colorado State Model Evaluation System. We do not, as far as I know, use student test data in any way to be evaluated. We do collect student test data for our professional learning communities, our PLCs, but they are not tied to our evaluation. Teacher recourse in my district: if I felt like I was being treated unfairly, I didn't like my evaluation, I could not find any recourse written in our board policies or our teacher handbook. And even I asked a couple other teachers, and they mostly just said you would talk to the union. The Colorado Education Association, our union rep, we have several in the building, and they would help us out. One court case that was actually fought by the Colorado Education Association was Masters versus the school district number 1 in Denver, which is called DPS, or Denver Public Schools. A couple of years ago, a group of teachers sued the school district, arguing that the district was misusing a provision in the law to fire experienced and effective teachers. And their first court case in the district court did not go their way. They were it ruled against them, but the union brought it up to the appeals court, which then ruled for the teachers. I couldn't find anything after that if DPS has changed their ways, but it did appear that the union was helpful in that case. So my reflection, how is this going to help me in my future as an administrator? First of all, if I came into a school, I would probably not change their evaluation system much. But if I did see that I wanted to do something differently, I would definitely consult with district attorneys first before making any changes. I wouldn't want to be breaking the law. I wouldn't want to open my school up to any lawsuits. So I really would want to make sure that everything I was doing was within the law. Definitely, I would want to evaluate teachers based on multiple measures. I think 2 observations formally a year is not enough. I do like the rubric that we use now because I think that opens up really great conversation between teachers and evaluators. And I like that we don't use student testing data as a high stakes, like we have to get this done or else I could be fired tool. I think that would stress out teachers more, and they would start teaching specifically to the test, which I feel like takes away a lot of the other great parts of teaching, connecting with students, building their curiosity, improving inquiry, things like that. So I don't see the value in VAM as a high stakes evaluation tool, but I do see the value in it as a guide to professional development. So using that data in a PLC, a professional learning community for teachers, to compare their teaching methods with each other. This teacher taught this better. What did they do? That sort of thing, I think, would actually be more beneficial than using that as a tool to punish teachers. So that is how I'm thinking about teacher evaluation, and thanks.